Hey everyone, Richard Bass here from Thriving with Richard Bass. Today we're talking about something that's critically important and often overlooked: ADHD in girls. As a special education teacher for over a decade and author of the ADHD Parenting Guide for Girls, I've seen firsthand how girls with ADHD are consistently misunderstood, misdiagnosed, or missed entirely. The statistics are staggering. Girls are diagnosed with ADHD an average of 5 years later than boys, and many aren't identified until adolescence or adulthood. This delay has serious consequences for their academic success, self esteem, and mental health. In the next few minutes, I'll share why ADHD in girls looks so different from boys, the specific signs teachers and doctors often miss, and what parents need to know to advocate for their daughters. Let's dive in. First, let's understand why ADHD in girls is so frequently overlooked. The traditional picture of ADHD is based primarily on how it presents in boys: hyperactive, disruptive, impulsive, and impossible to ignore. But girls with ADHD often look completely different. Girls are more likely to have the inattentive type of ADHD rather than the hyperactive impulsive type. This means their struggles are internal and less visible. They're not bouncing off the walls or interrupting class. Instead, they're quietly struggling, often labeled as spacey, unmotivated, or simply not living up to their potential. Let me share an example from my classroom. I had two students, both with ADHD. Michael was constantly out of his seat, calling out answers and disrupting lessons. He was referred for evaluation within the first month of school. Sarah sat quietly at her desk, appeared to be paying attention, but consistently forgot to turn in homework, lost track of assignments, and seemed to daydream during instruction. Her ADHD wasn't identified until fifth grade after years of being told she just needed to try harder. Here's what makes this even more challenging. Girls with ADHD often develop sophisticated masking strategies. They work incredibly hard to hide their struggles and appear to be coping. This masking takes enormous energy and often leads to anxiety, depression, and complete exhaustion by the time they get home. So, what does ADHD actually look like in girls? Let me share the key signs that are frequently missed. The first major sign is the appearance of being scattered or disorganized despite trying hard. These girls might have messy backpacks, lose belongings constantly, forget assignments even when they've written them down, and struggle to keep track of multi-step tasks. But unlike boys with similar struggles, they're often embarrassed by this and try to hide it. I worked with a girl named Emma who would arrive early to school every day to reorganize her locker and check what she'd forgotten. She was working twice as hard as her peers just to appear somewhat organized. Her ADHD wasn't recognized because she seemed like she was managing, but she was exhausted and anxious all the time. The second sign is excessive daydreaming, or appearing to zone out. Teachers might describe these girls as being in their own world or not paying attention. But this isn't defiance or lack of interest. Their minds are constantly active, and they struggle to filter relevant information from the constant stream of thoughts. Third, emotional dysregulation that looks like sensitivity or moodiness. Girls with ADHD often have intense emotional reactions that seem disproportionate to the situation. They might cry easily, have friendship drama, or seem overly sensitive to criticism. This is often attributed to personality or hormones rather than recognized as an ADHD symptom. 10-year-old Maya would have emotional meltdowns at home after holding it together all day at school. Her parents thought she was just dramatic or going through a phase. Once her ADHD was identified and she learned regulation strategies, the intensity of these episodes decreased significantly. Fourth, social challenges that manifest differently than in boys. Boys with ADHD might be too aggressive or impulsive in friendships. Girls with ADHD often struggle to follow complex social rules, miss social cues, interrupt conversations, or share too much personal information. They might have trouble maintaining long-term friendships despite desperately wanting connection. Fifth, perfectionism and anxiety. Many girls with ADHD develop perfectionist tendencies as a way to compensate for their executive function challenges. They might spend hours on homework to ensure it's perfect, or avoid starting tasks because they're afraid of making mistakes. This perfectionism often masks the underlying ADHD struggles. 6. Hyperfocus on specific interests. While girls with ADHD struggle to pay attention to things that don't interest them, they can become completely absorbed in topics they love. This might look like reading for hours, creating elaborate art projects, or becoming an expert in a specific subject. Teachers and parents might think she can focus when she wants to, not recognizing this as an ADHD characteristic. Seventh, physical restlessness that's more subtle than hyperactivity. Instead of running around the room, girls might fidget with jewelry, play with their hair constantly, tap their feet, or seem unable to sit still in their chairs. This is often dismissed as normal fidgeting rather than recognized as a sign of ADHD. Eighth, executive function struggles that become more obvious as academic demands increase. Elementary school might go relatively smoothly, but middle school brings increased organizational demands, multiple teachers, and complex schedules. This is often when girls with ADHD start to fall apart academically, even though their intelligence hasn't changed. I've seen this pattern repeatedly. A bright girl who managed fine through elementary school suddenly can't keep up in 6th or 7th grade. Everyone assumes she's become lazy or distracted by social concerns, when actually her ADHD was always there, but the increased demands finally exceeded her coping strategies. Now let's talk about why these signs are so often missed by professionals. Many teachers and doctors were trained using outdated criteria that focus primarily on hyperactive boys. They're looking for disruptive behavior, not internal struggles. Additionally, girls are socialized to be compliant, organized, and attentive. When they struggle with these expectations, it's often attributed to not trying hard enough rather than a neurological difference. Girls are also more likely to have anxiety or depression alongside ADHD. Sometimes these co-occurring conditions are diagnosed while the underlying ADHD is missed. Treating the anxiety without addressing the ADHD rarely resolves the core struggles. Here's something crucial for parents to understand. If your daughter is struggling despite clearly trying her best, if she's anxious and exhausted from the effort of keeping up, if she seems like she's working twice as hard as her peers for half the results, consider ADHD even if she's not hyperactive or disruptive. Let me share some specific situations that should raise red flags. Your daughter might need evaluation if she loses things constantly despite organizational systems, forgets to turn in completed homework regularly, has messy handwriting or struggles with writing tasks, seems overwhelmed by morning or evening routines, has friendship challenges related to impulsivity or social awareness, experiences emotional meltdowns that seem out of proportion, or is achieving below her apparent ability despite working hard. Also, pay attention if she's exhausted after school and can only hold it together in public, if she hyper-focuses on interests but can't focus on less preferred tasks, if she's developing anxiety or low self-esteem about school performance, or if organizational and time management skills aren't developing as expected for her age. What should parents do if they suspect ADHD? First, document specific examples of struggles across different settings. Teachers, coaches, and other adults who work with your daughter can provide valuable observations. Second, request a comprehensive evaluation. This should include ADHD-specific assessments, not just general behavioral questionnaires. Make sure evaluators understand how ADHD presents differently in girls. Third, if school personnel dismiss your concerns, seek outside evaluation. You know your daughter best. Trust your instincts if something doesn't feel right. Fourth, remember that ADHD evaluation isn't just about diagnosis. It provides valuable information about your daughter's cognitive profile, strengths, and areas where she needs support. Here's what effective support looks like for girls with ADHD. They need validation that their struggles are real and not their fault. The shame many girls feel about their difficulties is incredibly damaging to self-esteem. They need explicit teaching of organizational and time management skills. These don't develop naturally for ADHD brains and must be taught systematically. They need accommodations that address their specific challenges, like extended time for tests if processing speed is affected, preferential seating to reduce distractions, or permission to use fidget tools. They need help developing emotional regulation strategies. The intensity of ADHD emotions requires specific coping skills. They need support in building and maintaining friendships. Social skills coaching can be incredibly helpful for girls with ADHD, and they need adults who understand that their difficulties aren't due to lack of effort or character flaws. Let me share a success story. 12-year-old Olivia spent years being told she was lazy and unmotivated. Her grades were declining despite hours of homework each night. She developed anxiety and started saying she was stupid. After comprehensive evaluation confirmed ADHD, everything changed. Olivia learned she wasn't lazy. Her brain just worked differently. She got accommodations at school, learned organizational strategies that worked for her brain, and started medication that helped her focus. Most importantly, she stopped believing she was broken. Her self-esteem recovered, her grades improved, and she began to recognize her many strengths alongside her challenges. Here are some resources for parents. My book, The ADHD Parenting Guide for Girls, provides comprehensive information on recognizing, understanding, and supporting girls with ADHD. Organizations like CHADD and ADDI2 magazine offer excellent information specifically about girls and women with ADHD. Connect with other parents of girls with ADHD. The experiences and strategies they share can be invaluable, and work closely with your daughter's school to ensure she receives appropriate support and accommodations. Remember that early identification and support make an enormous difference. Girls who receive ADHD diagnosis and treatment earlier have better academic outcomes, stronger self-esteem, and lower rates of anxiety and depression. Your daughter's struggles are not her fault. ADHD is a neurological difference that requires understanding, support, and appropriate interventions. With the right help, girls with ADHD can thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. If you're watching this and recognizing your daughter in these descriptions, trust yourself and advocate for evaluation. You're not overreacting or being a helicopter parent. You're recognizing that your daughter needs support, and that awareness is the first step toward helping her succeed. That's all for today. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to Thriving with Richard Bass. Drop a comment below sharing your experiences. Have you navigated ADHD identification for a daughter? What signs did you notice? What challenges did you face? I read every comment, and your stories help other families feel less alone. See you in the next video.